easy to understand for all of us, that would be Dr. Dieter. So thank you, everyone. And Dr. Dieter, go ahead, take it away. Why don't you start by just explaining salutogenesis to everybody?
So can you see me all? Yes? No me veo yo ahí? Sí? Okay, hi. I think we are the same the last time that we saw each other last time. For those who don't know me, I'm Dieter Lenoir. I'm the medical doctor here in Mexico. And Kevin and Aubrey asked me to introduce what the concept of salutogenesis is and means. And it's a very important concept for us because salutogenesis is really in the heart what we want to do. It comes from salute, from Latin, from health, and genesis, how we can generate health. This is the most important concept. And we take it a little further from how Aaron Antonovsky was the first one who described this term in the 70s. And for us, it has been a very inspiring term because we try to understand it from a broader perspective, not just from the psychological perspective, but from the health biological perspective. And it starts from the fertility of the earth to the whole cycle of the health-giving properties, from fertility to the biological health in an ecosystem. And at the end of the cycle of the ecosystem is our health in a perspective, in an ecological perspective. Health means the continuous creative processes of a biological perspective to bring health to the whole ecosystem. And at the end of the ecosystem is the human being. And if something is destroyed in all this biological advanced in this chain of change of biological health, at the end of the process, the human health can be fertilized or can be worsen and become ill health. So this is the concept of Antonovsky, which was created in the 70s, and we tried to bring it from the perspective of how can we understand health from a perspective, a broader perspective, from a biological, ecological point of view. A ver si me pones a mí porque no me veo.
Fantastic. So basically, what would be the difference? Because a lot of us, some of us are familiar with salutogenesis, and some of us have also heard the word pathogenesis. So can you touch on basically what the difference between the two of those are?
Sí, I will bring a slide so I can explain it through a slide. I don't know if you can see it from here. This one? Can you see this one?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes? Okay, perfect. So this is more easy. Antonovsky put this analogy that we live in a river. The river is the river of life. And what we want to accomplish in salutogenesis is to promote health, well-being. And in the first 3 states you can see in this slide, the first one is the promotion of health, the second one is the health education, and the third one is the preventive aspect. These 3 aspects are not taken care of in our healthcare systems today, and we are in the last 2 stages, which is the curative and when the disease really starts. And there we have a tremendous amount of effort to help people to get rid of the signs and symptoms of disease. And what we need to understand in this river of life is that we need to be stronger swimmers from birth on, that we can go through life being healthier and healthier, and not coming to the curative aspects at the end of the chain of disease. And so our healthcare system takes just the last two steps, and this is so costly and so ineffective, and that now we need to start a well-being, a quality of life, promoting health, which starts from our perspective, from a new understanding of how we are interrelated with nature, interdependent with nature, and that we need to promote this interdependency. And if we understand more about health outside of in nature, we are going to start to understand our health on a more efficient way, so that we can become stronger, more resilient. The term Antonovsky uses is resiliency. That means that we can adapt ourselves to the different aspects of problems we can encounter in the river of life. Sometimes there are waves, sometimes there are rocks, sometimes there are animals, sometimes there are diseases. And when we swim through this river of life, we need to not to jump out of the river, but we need to be in the river, but be strong enough, resilient enough, and to create a medicine who creates resiliency on our physical, our emotional, on a spiritual part, so that we can go through the river of life without coming or to reduce the possibilities that we come to the curative allopathic medicine. And from there are big systems of integral health well-being systems that we need to promote. And that's what we do, we try to do in Sanandi.
Fantastic. And so basically the promotional aspect is teaching people the principles of salutogenesis?
Yes, we need, si me pones el de la montaña, sí. The promotion is to create a new type of education where we create the internal security that we can create health with our psychological, emotional, lifestyle change or behavioral changes that we do in life. If you see this slide, the first one, and on the upper part, we live in a much broader context. We call it the ecological context, which is in reality the spiritual context, where nature and we ourselves, we are deeply connected and interwoven. And these aspects are totally unconscious. We cannot see it, but these are the big aspects which create health and well-being, and one most important aspect, meaning in life. If we don't create meaning in life, and meaning can just come if we are interconnected and if we acknowledge our interdependency with nature. So this is the first big level where Novalis says that nature is an extended human being, that everything what's happening outside is going to affect us sooner or later. So if we destroy the fertility of the earth, our ecological system, our health, our resiliency, our possibilities for health diminish. So we need to understand the context, and then we have our lifestyle and psychological motivational level are so important, because what we need to create is to understand the interconnectedness, and with this start collaborating with nature to create a new state of being which can affect the whole biodiversity, which is at its essence, the biodiversity is in its essence, the quality of life we can aspire. As less diverse our biological system, as poor our health on a biological, our physical part gets weak, our emotional part gets weak, and finally we cannot connect to this big spiritual being which is nature. This is the deeper context. And at the tip of the iceberg, we can see the state of health. And this has to be seen and visualized outside, that the human being is as healthy as he lives in an environment which should be protected, because a conscious human being never destroys something which is part of him. And this is the most important part of the conscious being, who never destroys and helps evolution, because evolution is the manifestation of a big potential. And we are the human beings. At the end of the cycle of evolution is the human being. And if we can aspire to more health, immediately it has to be reflected in our environment, because we depend 100% of the health of our environment. So if we want to create a new society of health, we have to create the whole paradigm has to shift from a curative medicine to a preventive, health-giving medicine, from child to animals, to bacteria, to plants. Everything has to be taken account so we can aspire to a new state of health, which is another word for new state of consciousness in our life.
Excellent. So well said. So can you touch a little bit on the sense of coherence in the salutogenesis model? Can you explain how that is relevant to?
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. One of the essential aspects Aaron Antonovsky told is create coherence. And coherence is when your mind, your thought, your feeling, and your action are coherent, mean they have meaning and bring a positive change. And this positive change is evolution, which is the manifestation of one potential, one own potentiality. Every human being has its own potential. It's individual, but it needs the whole health of the environment, of its states of mind, of its states of its feeling, to be in a state of coherence. If not, we start going in the other direction, which is pathogenesis. If you can put it, this is really a good slide. Sorry, this is in Spanish, but it means pathogenesis is exploitation, disintegration, and finally ill health. No, so if you see in where is it? This one. Yes, this is okay. You can see this one.
Yes, but make it bigger.
Quítame este de aquí. If you see in the center, what we do in nature, we explode. No, when we create bigger and bigger and more quantity, because everything what we want to create and where all our meaning is to create quantity, but we have forget the quality. Quality is very interrelated with coherence, because when you have a new coherence, let's see in our mind-body system, when you are coherent, you can start to give, to understand, to participate. When you are not coherent, you get isolated and you become more and more rigid. So in our pathological type of system that creates the last two steps of the pathogenesis, the curative in the disease system, this is the root cause of is how we explode our planet, which is at the center, and how much, in the more we explode, the more medicine we need. And there's a big interrelationship in what's happening to the planet and what's happening to our health as a human being. It's totally the same thing, because the approach in nature is to explode, to use more chemicals, and as the plant and the animal gets weaker and weaker, they need more and more medicines. And the consequence is that the human being at the bottom of this slide, you can see this child, gets weaker and weaker and weaker, means less and less coherent, less and less resilient. And so he needs more and more medicine. So the same thing what happened in agriculture, in our agriculture system, which is a living system, has the same consequences also in the human being when it is when we are weaker and weaker, less and less coherent, we need more and more help from outside. And that's the big problem. That's the exploitation, the degradation, and finally the sickness of the whole system. And we need to create the contrary of this, which is the salutogenesis approach. Ya lo puedes sacar.
Fantastic. So why don't we talk a little bit about what stress does to the overall sense of coherence, since we're still on the coherence topic?
It's all about stress, no? Because if there's any system which is living under stress, which is less and less coherent, starts creating problems in all type of directions. No, the most important one is that it loses its resiliency, and when it loses its resiliency, it becomes susceptible to disease, and that's the problem in general. But what was your question again? I was lost here with this.
You explained it well enough. It was basically what stress does to coherence and why it's important for us to mitigate that.
The stress in the system is, of course, systemic now in our environment, and this systemic stress is translated to us in different ways. If we eat an animal which has been stressed and which has eaten very poor quality of food, these stressors, which a sentient animal has biologically transformed in meat and psychologically be stressed, these stress hormones create a change in all his soul, which is then introduced to a human being. And this, since we have also a match with the animal soul, with every living being, it affects us profoundly. Rudolf Steiner told that everything we eat has an effect on how this plant or animal was treated in our present state of consciousness. So when we destroy a metabolism of an animal and we take this poor animal into our being, it starts creating lots of stress. It creates metabolites, toxic metabolism. It creates change in our consciousness. It creates problems in our adrenal glands. We have more stress hormones. And the stress hormones literally create big buckets of big black holes in our immune system. And when our immune system is weakened, we start with autoimmune diseases, we start with weakness, and we start finally with degenerative diseases. So as more stress in the system is, it is translated immediately into our antenna, which is the most sophisticated antenna we have, which is our nervous system, endocrine system, and our immunological system. And if we have holes in these three systems, automatically our vital energy decreases, and we are much more susceptible of disease.
So how would we ourselves put into play, or mitigate these type of stressors and prevent this pathogenesis to taking over?
Yeah. No se ve, ya se cambió esta otra vez.
Así se ve.
Here, no, this one, the next one. Okay, si quitas este aquí para verlo. The first response, which Antonio is here putting me in a slide, is this one. You can see how many prescriptions we created in 1997 and how in just 2 decades, how we create more and more prescriptions. The same is in agriculture. We need more chemicals, more pesticides, more antibiotics for the animals. It's the system, the whole system is now diseased. So the approach of giving more and more remedies is not going to work. So we need to start creating salutogenesis, creating health. And this has to come from the beginning, how fertile is our land, our soil, which is the most important aspect from where health can start to recreate itself in a system to create a biodiverse, healthy, resilient system in which human being becomes a cultivator who cultivates biodiversity and starts eating correct food again, healthy, whole, plant-based food, which starts creating a shift in his health and creating again resilience so he can mitigate the big problems we have as stressor, psychological stressors we are living in. So this is just one aspect that our approach, the curative approach, is skyrocketing. And the real approach which we should create is create an environment, because we live in a context. In this context, if it gets destroyed, we start getting weaker and weaker. This is the most important approach of what we try to do in our land in Sanandi. No?
Excellent. So so for some of the participants on this call, how can we put this into play? You know, what can the average person do? What type of activities? Because not all of us have, farmland to go ahead and plant our own food. And most of us live in city metropolitan areas. So what can we do to mitigate this?
Well, first we need to understand what is salutogenesis in contrasted what we all know, what is pathogenesis, no? Pathogenesis that we all know, that we're getting weaker, that we need more assistance, that our environment is deeply disturbed, that our water systems are not clean anymore, that our food is not a food which can give us the health-giving forces to create a connection of our body, mind, and spirit. That's the first big issue, because our metabolism is so destroyed by what we eat and by what we feel also, but specifically here by what we introduce to our five senses. So the thing is, what nourishes you through the senses, through your mouth, what gets into your system, and how can this transform positively in health-giving properties. So what we need to understand is go away from pathos, from the pathogenic approach of life, and create our own health. And as an individual, everyone has its own individual aspect of health. So the first answer would be become a participator of creating health-giving things to nature. Eat well, drink best quality of water, and participate in groups who are giving a process of regeneration in this planet, because this is the biggest meaning we can have today. When you participate in salutogenetic movements, you participate in a new, bigger meaning, which is going to interconnect the consciousness of human beings together again to reestablish health. So the most important thing is go away from noise and create silence again in your physiology with no toxicity, silence again in your mind, and become an attentive listener to what is the most important moment in your life now, and where you can start giving again something back to nature. It's the law of return we need to reestablish. No, we have taken out for nature. Now the law of return is the only law we need to reestablish, and with this create meaning and health again in our life.
Excellent. And we have a great question that came from the audience. Normally we'd like to hold the question and answer till the end, but I think we're getting close to our 15 minutes, 20 minutes allotted for Dr. Dieter to speak. So I'm just going to transition right into the questions. The first question comes from Anthony, and I think it hits exactly on what we were talking about right now. So Anthony writes, when he's exercising, he's stressing his body system to a certain degree. When animals hunt, they're creating stress to their prey by chasing them. When we farm, we stress the earth, soil, and all that is living in it. He said, is there a good stress for us to undertake? Is it a balance?
Of course, we need movement, and we need movement of our hormones, of our suprarenal glands. These hormones are not bad, but if they stay constantly high, then they start draining our energy. So to keep moving, we have millions of chemical reactions which we need to stay healthy. And as Antonovsky says, we have to be in a state of resiliency that we can support a good stress. But if the stressor grows, we need to be stronger and stronger. But the problem is that we are so stressed in our system, in our mind, that our body is under constant secretion of stress hormones, which start debilitating the immune system. So a good stress of moving and activity for example, exercise, these are stressors which are very healthy, but this is not stress in the sense of what we are talking. I'm talking here about stress which drains our energy. This is the stress we have to start not shutting down, but diminish slowly, so that we can create again this resiliency. So when a stressor comes, we cannot live without stressors. It does not hit us on a very weak point. Because if you're weak and weakened, for example, a child which constantly takes an antibiotic, it comes one virus and it hits him 10 times stronger as a child which has been well nourished and is resilient. So the stressors we need, which is the river of life, where there are banks, where there are big waves, everything is in nature creating some type of stress in our body, but we can still respond to the stress on a healthy way and not react just with medicines. We have to create a new way to respond to the challenges which are coming to us. And this is individual. This depends on constitutions, but we have to create, or we should create, a medicine which should promote that you can resist the stressors the best way possible. And the stressor is not bad. If you have a virus and a virus comes in it, it stresses your system, but it also activates your system on a way that your immune system starts to function, so that you get rid with your own capacity of the virus. And then what happened after this stressor is overtaken and you came to a victory over it, you become stronger. So it is not good to take away the stressor. For example, in the river of life, you cannot put vaccines to everybody so they don't get a stressor into the system. The stressors are good if you respond, learn from them, and become more healthy. Not taking away the stressors, for example, in infections. So there are good stressors and bad stressors. And the thing is, as Antonovsky said, we have to become a good swimmer. Means that when a stressor comes, you can handle it, learn from it, and be stronger after the stress.
Excellent. And I'd like to open up or take a moment to explain to everybody. If you have questions, right now would be the time to go ahead and input them into the group chat. The group chat, if you look at the bottom, you can just hit chat and then you can type it in, and we have time for about 2 to 3 questions, but I'll go ahead and give Dr. Dieter another one. Dr. Dieter, what's the difference between a physical stressor and a mental stressor? And is that also something that, mentally, the mental fortitude, is that also very important? Or is physical stressor something that we should be more focused on for our body?
No. We are in a system. In the system, you cannot divide the mind and the body. Any stressor which affects you biologically also affects you mentally. In any stress which affects you mentally, which is the electric part of us, affects every cell in our physiology. So this mind-body, it's just one unity. no? And our body is a big mind, and then our mind is a big body. So everything is interrelated. Of course, when you are a very mental person and you're repeating the stress from yesterday today in your mind and constantly going over the stressor again with your thought, it creates a problem in your physiology and also on an emotional part, no? The emotional part, which is represented by the heart, can exactly feel what's happening mentally, and our cells in our body, our pancreas, our liver, our suprarenal glands, everything is monitoring our thought process. So when we want to change something, we cannot change it only from our biological, physical, organic eating food. We have to also change our mind and to become a more coherent mind, so that our mind does not create the same toxins from yesterday. So this is something which has to be in account. And Antonovsky called this brain heart coherence, which is to be of the most important part. So this is a coherence which is biological, mentally, emotionally, and it's just one. So when we talk about one, it really talks about everything. Everything, we are a field of possibilities. And in this field, there are so many different variables which come in and all affect everything. So we have to take care of our physically, because this is the vehicle for our mind-body medicine, but we have to take care, as higher we are in evolution, we have to take care of our thought process and our feelings, which affect tremendously. When we are in a state of anxiety, we eat too much, or we start destroying our body with sugars or cigarettes or drugs. So everything has to be accompanied by a holistic approach of becoming a good swimmer. Means that you can swim through a river of life in all its immensity and be part of this river without losing your vital forces mentally, in your heart, emotionally, and physically. And as coherent possible you can be, as healthy you are. A person is as healthy as coherent he is. He is as healthy as his consciousness is on the highest level. So health in its basic salutogenic principle is as conscious you are, that you are part of everything else. And as more you understand the interdependency, the interconnectedness of all nature, the more healthy you are, even if you have a disease.
So how do people improve that? I mean, what are some tips for people to get better? Because, you know, it takes much practice to be able to put this into play. So what are some activities that people can do to help strengthen this fortitude?
No, bueno, this is, of course, one part. We have to make a diagnosis. How is our lifestyle? No? And this, we have to create silence to look inside of us and tell what is draining our energy, mentally, physically, and start involucrating ourselves in getting rid of what is hurting us. And that can be food, that can be gluten, this can be dairy foods, that can be an obsessive thought, this can be a big sadness or fear, which we are recreating constantly. So we have to first make a diagnosis. No, it's as if you have a piece of land and it's totally polluted. So you have to see in what part of the pathogenesis you are, and then start giving health-giving properties again to your system. No, and this is a very broad question. We would have to talk about many aspects and the approaches which we use, which is, for example, in Ayurvedic medicine, which is your constitution, be respectful, for the different cycles in the day, what time you get up, your sleeping cycle, which is very, very, very important. How is your digestion? How is your energy? How is your eye? How much light does your eye has? How is your tongue? How toxic is your tongue? And there are so many aspects where you can make an auto-diagnosis and say, okay, here I'm not feeling well, so we should start giving health-giving nutrition, health-giving thoughts, health-giving environment, which starts slowly giving back what the body is or our system is needing. And for this need, we need to be more sensitive and more conscious and have a more sensitive way of looking what is our system asking for in giving in slowly new type of food, mentally, emotionally, physically, and environment. No, I think that walking in the woods is probably one of the most balancing medicines we can have, or for you in the ocean, where you really can communicate and get to a level of more awareness, of more peace, where you can start seeing what is not good for you and what is good for you, and start acknowledging what is good for you and nourishing you in all aspects, so that you slowly regain your health, your potentiality, so that you can see the cycle of life in yourself and try and begin to collaborate with health-giving properties in the whole chain of life.
Excellent. So basically, I would say that the first steps would be A, take a walk outside, B, get a diagnosis from a qualified healthcare practitioner.
Or take a good walk inside yourself and create silence. One moment of silence is the most important aspect, because this creates a clarity where you can start seeing. Without silence, you cannot make any diagnosis inside. You cannot see which aspect is the aspect which should be taken care primarily, so that you can start making the changes. So I think if you would ask me, I would say create moments of silence and solitude, so that you can distinguish what is good and what is not good for you. First, and then slowly, you will be blessed by the responses of silence, because you're going to see the changes automatically happening slowly. But you can start, what the important aspect of salutogenesis is that you can start involve yourself in co-participating in your health, and stop delegating the health to a doctor. Hello? Hello, Kevin? Can you listen to me? ¿Sí? Aubrey?
Sí, aquí estamos, we're here.
Hi, yes, we're here. I'm not sure.
Or are we practicing now silence?
We're taking
Everybody's silent now.
It looks like Kevin may have been. Oh, yeah, Kevin was booted from the site. His computer died. So
Kevin's not here anymore.
if does anybody have any more questions? I don't see any. If not, is there anything else you wanted to cover, Dr. Dieter, about salutogenesis or
I would suggest that in the next session of salutogenesis, because this is so big and I don't even know where to start. Hi, Kevin, you're back. I was recommending for the next session, I don't know when is the next webinar now, so that there's question and I can answer specifically, and we can start like going through a program of health. And instead, this is just an introduction. And as I told, I even don't know, this is such a big question, salutogenesis, that it's just a little drop in an ocean of what we can discuss. So if we start if we in the future going to discuss about health, we should create a little program so we don't get lost in just philosophy.
Absolutely. So I think for next time, we chose the date. If everybody is interested, you can go ahead and sign right up at the Privy link. We'll send you the link when we send you the replay for the next one. That one starts with the soil. So I think Dr. Dieter will be in the wormery to talk about the soil and where salutogenesis starts for the next time. It's September 24th, I think.
Okay. Yes.
Sure.
Okay. If there's no more questions.
Kevin?
Yes, sir. So I think, I want to thank you again for taking the time to go over this. And just to add on to what you said, you know, many of us don't know too much about salutogenesis. So I think this was a great way to kind of just talk about the theory and just the basics behind it. As Aubrey said, we have the third part of our webinar scheduled for September 24th. We'll go ahead and notify all of our Wellness Seeker newsletter recipients in our upcoming newsletters. But thank you very much, Dr. Dieter. You know, I mean, you're one of the first healthcare practitioners that actually goes out there and says, you know what, you have to take a look inside you. You know, it's not just a diagnosis from everyone else. You also have to take a look inside you. And that's very humbling to hear a doctor say that. And, you know, a lot of times here in the United States, we don't have doctors that tell us that. And so we thank you for that. We thank you for providing us all your knowledge and helping us guide us on this journey.
Mm-hmm. It's a pleasure. Nice meeting you all. And hopefully I can, in the next seminars, we can organize them very good. So that the questions you have, so that we can start creating point by point and move on forward so that we have all the same base and that I'm not talking of too many different issues at the same time. And at the end, I would just make the last reflection is if you create space in your silence, then you have a much broader possibility of change. In a world where our mind is so saturated, our physiology is so saturated by different tastes and different substances where we are allergic to. We are sitting in front of technology the whole day, and our mind, our thought process is always the same. It is engaged electrically in a repetition, which in this repetition creates the stress we were talking that affects our physiology. So what we need first is to create a space. The space is created through silence. And when there is silence in our physiology, newness can arrive. Without newness, we cannot change anything, because then we only create it as an intellectual wish. But if we want to create new health, we need to create a new space where we can have reflection, which is a beautiful word, reflect on ourselves and start to make a journey of a better understanding of how we can participate in our mind-body medicine and how we can start co-participating as a group to start healing our planet.
What a fantastic way to end it. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for taking the time to spend with us this morning.